Morning, everybody.
Morning.
Morning.
Hi, Louise.
Oh, I recognise some faces there. I was expecting Andy. Wasn't expecting to see you, Martin. So that's a nice surprise.
I know. I'm the ringmaster, and
Very,
I'm the
very
surprise
good.
billing.
That's what she said. She says it was a nice surprise.
Yeah. You know what? You were bribing me with cupcakes and things, but actually, Martin, as the ringmaster, would have done it. But I will have all the rest. Lovely to see you all.
Great. Well, morning, everybody. Welcome to Marketing for Breakfast. Some new faces, some people who've been before. I'm Martin Chilcott. I am, sort of ringmaster, I suppose. I just invented that job title. But I do this on behalf of our Cubed. And I think we're up to about the 6th or 7th of these breakfasts. So I hope we've got the format relatively okay and comfortable. It's very informal. What we're going to do is, I'm very pleased to say we've got Karen Dumbrell here, she's going to talk about loyalty. I do have to mention that she does work for Arsenal, which I find difficult to say, bearing in mind they seem to be doing rather better than my London club, Chelsea. And Karen's going to take us through, has done a lot of work in loyalty and customer retention. So she'll take us through about 15 minutes of some thought starters, and then we'll open it up for discussion. And as you can see from our cube, you've got Craig and Dave and Andy. So without further ado, if that's okay, I just thought we'd kick off. If you could just take 30 seconds to just say who you are, who you work for. So it's just so the room knows, everybody else in the room knows. So who you are, who you work for, and maybe just very quickly what you're doing or not regarding loyalty. Is it important for your organisation or not? What you might be doing, is it working, is it not? That's a lot to cram into 30 seconds, but if you could just give us that sort of top line, that would be great. So perhaps we could kick off with Simon.
Yeah, I can kick off if you like. So I'm Simon. I work at NEC Group in the sort of insight team, heading the insight team. And it's about sort of loyalty and things. I guess what we do in loyalty. We do various things in loyalty, but we don't have any big loyalty schemes. We have sort of looked at loyalty in the past. We have a fan club for regular attendees of our venues that is kind of a membership scheme that you pay £40 a year for, and it gives you various benefits, including early access to tickets. So we have kind of that kind of loyalty. And we have looked at loyalty points type schemes, but we have a challenge that people don't attend our venues that often. So a typical person is attending probably once or twice a year. So it's quite hard to get a loyalty scheme to work with that frequency of attending. There are some people who attend a long time, but yes, it's kind of a challenge for us. We do a lot on the B2B side on loyalty and building relationships and trips and all kinds of other stuff. But seaside we struggle a little bit.
That'd be great. We'll pick that up later about this thing about. I was once told by somebody where they purchased once or twice a year, said, "We're going to do a Tesco club card." Are you? They have 50, 60 purchase occasions a year. It's a very different. Anyway, we'll perhaps cover that a bit later on. Thank you, Simon. Sally.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sally Waterfield, and I head up the sales and marketing teams for a mutual financial services company called Foresters. We've been around since 1834, and if somebody takes out a financial plan with us, they become basically a member, which means that they can have a say in how the organisation's run. We don't have shareholders. So for us, loyalty is really key, because we want our members to be as engaged as possible so that they do actually attend our annual general meeting and have a say in how the organisation moves forward. We don't have a loyalty scheme per se, but when somebody does invest with us, then they get access to member benefits, and we give back in the region of just below sort of £2 million a year in member benefits. So in discretionary grants that don't need to be paid back, dental and optical bills, assistance, you name it, we'll cover it. So yeah, loyalty for us really is key in driving the business, but also in acquiring new members, so lookalikes of those that we have already, through things like member get member.
Yep. Okay, brilliant. Thanks, Sally. Carla.
Hey everyone, I'm Carla. I work for the Body Shop. We do have a loyalty program. We have an everyday loyalty program called Love Your Body Club, whereby customers earn points for their purchases, and then those points can be redeemed against money off future purchases. Huge focus for us, really, really important, especially in current times. Competition's high, people haven't got much money, so we're actually doing a piece at the moment to kind of really scrutinize our program and understand what it is that customers want, but also understanding from us as a brand as well what's important in terms of those kind of softer measures as well. It's not just about spending, in terms of rewarding the right customer behavior and making customers feel valued for doing that as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Louise.
Hi everyone. So I work for Unity Trust Bank. Probably no one will have heard of them. So we're 40 years old next year, and we're an ethical business bank. So quite a niche area. We do nothing currently with loyalty at all. And I'd say, having worked across various businesses, we've probably got the most loyal customers that I've ever known. We have sort of customer satisfaction scores of sort of nearly 90%. Our customers absolutely love us and they want to stay with us and take out successive products, but we've not built anything. So part of what my role is exploring that, really trying to take advantage of the advocates.
Oh, Louise.
We've got that at the moment. We're really not sort of. Yeah, did you lose me then?
It just
Can you
dipped
hear me
out
now?
for a few seconds. Yeah, that's fine now.
Okay.
Yeah, keep going. Sorry.
Yeah, so we really want to explore a program where we take advantage of the advocates that we've got across all sectors. We're really ramping up the business 24 to 26 and going into moving away from a focus that's traditionally just been on loans to looking at some really good market leading savings products. So yeah, that's what I'm really, really interested in. And just as an aside, our customer database is horrific. And so, yeah, there's a lot of work to do there in terms of sort of really getting that into shape.
Right, thanks, Louise. By the way, I should declare an interest here that Louise and I have worked together twice.
We have.
Once was 20 years ago, and I'll perhaps save it to the end. But it was a very simple idea about hanging on to getting more customers.
Yeah, it was some really successful activity.
Yeah.
So,
and then also at Derbyshire, that was at Vision Express, and at Derbyshire Building Society, where we also, Sally, we also pondered how do we explain mutuality to our members so that they get, because it's one of the great challenges.
Sounds familiar.
Monique, perhaps you'd like to just tell us who you are and what you're doing with loyalty.
Morning, everyone. So I'm Monique. I head up the, it's a long title, Customer Data Insight and Research Team at National Express. And loyalty is something we don't have at the moment, but we are looking to implement. And we've tried to do this multiple times and failing because we can't actually agree internally on what we think loyalty should be for National Express. Similar to what Simon was saying, the average trip rate for our customers is quite low, and therefore how do you make a loyalty scheme relevant for people who don't travel with you that regularly? We have a lot of people who travel, well, we have a small proportion who travel regularly, but our strategy is to get more people to travel with us and move kind of away from cars and trains. Apologies if anyone is here from the car or train industry, but it is about how do we create that loyalty, and there's a thing that we're looking at, and I think it's quite important, is around value exchange, and consumers are customers are increasingly thinking, if I give you something, we can give, you give me something back. And what I mean by that is we're trying to look at if potentially customers were to give us some information like a date of birth or something about them, we could then unlock potentially some loyalty benefits to them. And that's something we've thought about. But again, I'm really interested to kind of find out what else is out there, because we want to launch a loyalty scheme pretty much within the next 6 to 12 months.
Okay, thank you, Monique. Rachel.
Morning, everybody. Hi, I'm Rachel, and I'm head of direct marketing at Nielsen Active Holidays. So I joined about a year ago, and the state of the CRM database was horrific. So I spent majority of my first 6 months trying to work through that, and now we're in a better place where we have almost a single customer view, which is brilliant. So my next step is understanding how we can implement a loyalty scheme. As it's the travel industry, it's a large, expensive purchase once a year, maybe twice a year. We've brought in a lot of new products that are enabling customers to visit one of our beach resorts and ski resorts potentially multiple times a year, but understand the cost of living is proving problematic for customers wanting to take that brilliant holiday with their family and their friends, etc. And also there's an internal discussion as whether we need to have a loyalty scheme, because each of our customer is so important to us that we wouldn't want to alienate them, like with a new customer versus a repeat customer, and making sure that all customers are treated equally on site. So hence why we have a no discount policy, because we didn't think that it's fair for a customer booking early on in their kind of holiday purchase period versus a late booker should get a different price. So there's lots of internal discussions about this, and one's a bit of a minefield.
Sounds it.
Yeah.
And having worked, well, actually, I was head of direct marketing for Thomas Cook back in medieval times, so I can understand some of the challenges you face. And I think Nielsen was actually part of Thomas Cook Group at one point.
Yes, it was. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And they kind of were able to, find private investors to be able to take on their journey, and they're doing really well, and their product is brilliant. And again, we do have some really, really loyal customers. Is how do we make sure that they keep on purchasing a holiday with us? Absolutely.
And advocating your brand as well.
Absolutely. Yes, I've been advocating that as an idea within the business, and things take a little while.
Without stealing Karen's thunder, I think it's always worth, the 3 areas of loyalty are, A, you want to retain people, B, you want them to spend more when they are retained, and thirdly, it's the advocacy value as well, and it's thinking about those, and it's particularly where you've got infrequent purchase, which a couple of you have mentioned. Right, where shall I go next? Martin.
Morning, everyone. Alicia and I are from Sussex Cricket, down in Hove. In essence, we don't have a loyalty scheme. We're very much a membership-based business, but with that becomes member benefits. I don't think we've ever really thought about putting in a loyalty scheme, but it'd be interesting to understand dynamics and how that we could do that, whether that's something we implement in a year, 18 months, 2 years. But we're always looking to innovate and maybe start something that could become a added value as such to what we already provide.
Okay, right. Hove actually. I used to live in Brighton, so just call it Hove actually. Yeah. And of course, you've got that issue of the game of cricket is changing. There's almost 3 different games of cricket, and therefore people who might go and see them. Perhaps, I don't know.
Yeah, we have a different array of products that means that you can have 1 format, 2 formats, or 3 formats. So there's members from 80 to 5. So yeah, it's a big range of people.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Nikki.
Morning, everyone. So I'm Nikki. I'm currently working for Ralph Lauren, looking at potentially sort of do we want to do anything from a loyalty perspective. I've got a global role that's really exciting to have such a big brand to work on and work with on kind of devising whether loyalty is right and what it might want to look like. But my background is kind of loyalty in lots of different verticals. So I've worked in travel, financial services, retail, grocery, so been all over the place, streaming services, so lots of different loyalty guises.
Oh, lovely. Okay, thank you. By the way, Nikki, I did think about whether I should wear my Ralph Lauren polo shirt this morning. However, I did buy it in a Del Boy's Emporium in Turunç in Turkey, so I thought you might be a bit upset with me about it and point out that it's not genuine.
Well, I'm not wearing Ralph Lauren either, so.
And Mark, as the 4th emergency service, you could.
Yeah, good morning. Good morning. So, yeah, I'm Mark, and I work at the AA. Not the glamorous side of the AA, I hasten to add, so not the road services, but the insurance side. But nonetheless, still obviously working for a super brand. My responsibility is retention channel manager. So working across the whole piece, and you know, we're proud that although the AA is predominantly known as you mentioned there, Martin, you know, the 4th emergency service, as an insurance brand, we're the fastest growing insurer this year. But the challenge is it's a highly saturated market, and also a low touch point product really, that's becoming more and more digitalized in order to match customer channel consumption, whilst also trying to drive down cost to serve as well. And in our market, you know, price is king, as it is in many, but often that price is a little out of our control. The quality of product isn't well understood, and service is important to customers, but the problem is customers tend to buy the product on the hope of not using the product or service. It's a product where in many cases, you know, we and the customer don't want to necessarily use the product or service that they've bought. Current loyalty activity is really based on brand engagement communications and reactive offers to keep the most valuable customers. I'm a massive advocate of loyalty marketing, hence why wanting to be part of this, you know, really giving people reasons to stay rather than to leave. But loyalty is really challenging for insurance. I think, you know, some of you will hopefully appreciate inertia. It plays a part here, not wanting to disrupt customers and drive false positives. I think that's quite an interesting thing for me around loyalty campaigns. And what I mean by that is you're trying to do something positively, but actually it creates the complete opposite
wakes people up. They think, "Oh, I'll go and shop around." Yeah.
And the difficulty with insurance is often when they're using the product, which for many of you guys, you want the customer to do. In our case, it results in price changes, often the wrong way round. So the price goes up. However, we do want to keep the brand front of mind. And I guess, you know, the thing for us is the power of the brand is there for the AA. I know some of you guys work for super brands, but the brand is great for us. We do have member benefits for the AA Road members, which is a universal rewards that customers can engage with and use throughout the year. So that's what we do currently.
Right. Okay.
I used to do member benefits for the breakdown for the AA, so I can. If it's any consolation, it's not very glamorous on that side either.
Oh, nice. I
spent a lot of time at Fainham House.
I'm not there today.
Lucky you.
So, Mark, if you're going to follow Nikki's, you'll probably end up as a competitor at Yves Saint Laurent or something at this rate.
Because I'm worth it.
By the way, I think one of the most brilliant retention and loyalty insurance initiatives, not initiatives but strategies, was Admiral, and it came from a very simple thing: is that they did research. And I'll touch on this later about a retention that it said that they realised that 40% of households in the UK own 2 or more vehicles. And it used to be an absolute faff to try and organise it. And so they put together a strategic test and said, OK, we're going to do multi-car. And if you've got multi-car, if nobody else is doing multi-car, you're not going to lose your customers. And it's too much of a faff. And now they've got multi-use, so it's household as well. So we've got both cars and the house insured with Admiral. Am I going to go anywhere? No, because I've got to try and recreate all that. So it's sometimes it can come back to, you know, really strategic things which actually that change the fundamental bit of the business. Anyway, I won't steal any more of Karen's thunder. You can see various Herberts from R Cubed. I'm not going to get them to tell you what R Cubed does, but I'm sure they will. Craig will probably do that. In fact, Craig, you might want to do that now, or you can do it at the end. And we're going to run through till at least 10, but if you want to stay till 10:30, that's great. And people often do. And perhaps I should just hand over to Karen.
Great, thanks very much, Martin. So hello, everybody. My name's Karen Dumbrell, and I'm really going to have to do a whistle-stop tour. I was just going to talk a little bit about my thoughts on loyalty, touch on a few areas, but I think because of the breadth of the different types of organisations that everybody's working for, I'll keep it extremely high level, and then we can perhaps delve down a little bit into areas of interest after that. My background is that I started off at CRM financial services, but then moved into loyalty, and I've looked after Virgin Atlantic's Flying Club programme, pretty much most areas of it. So I've looked after the structure of it, the features and benefits that you get. I've looked after the partnerships, and actually I think that's quite important for those of you that are working for companies where you have low volume of transactions, infrequent transactions, let's say. That's where partners become very important. And done a little bit of a foray as I've also looked after their database as well, the loyalty database. Little foray into working for retail, so grocery loyalty, more airlines, and I'm currently looking after Arsenal's membership and rewards program. Yep, seeing a few raised eyebrows there, but and I think that's what I just wanted to talk very briefly about, what I think is the distinction between membership and loyalty programs. So when I'm talking about that, for me, a membership program is where you give some credentials to an organization and possibly money as well. For the most part, you do pay a membership fee. And in return for that, you receive some features and benefits that are almost guaranteed in return for that payment. I mean, freemium models are starting to become very popular. Initially, you get somebody's credentials, email address, date of birth, etc., for a free proposition, but move them into a paid proposition. But then for me, a loyalty program is something where you're rewarded for your transactions with that organization. And those can either be financial transactions, but I think now that we're moving into a world where we can do so much more technology-wise with data, it's not just the financial transactions now. You can reward people for their engagement with your company as well. And that's where you can go into really interesting things about gamification. For example, Strava, absolute key example of that. Sometimes those loyalty programs are points based. So I earn points and then I can spend them. That has its own dynamics with it, because actually those points have a value. So you have to start thinking about that. But my feeling is that the world is moving more to an emotional based and engagement based loyalty. However, for certain industry types, such as supermarkets, I think points works extremely well. Anyway, what I wanted to do as well was just to see if people wouldn't mind popping into the chat, if everybody's okay sort of doing that. What's your favourite loyalty program? And you don't have to write lots of why, but what's your favourite loyalty program if you belong to one? Is it points based or not? And also, if you do feel the urge, which programs do you think are absolutely terrible? Which ones really turn you off? I think that would be interesting as well to understand. Just a few stats for you. I was looking, there's been a recent white paper, Understanding Loyalty in Europe. So across 24 countries in Europe, 61.3% of the population belong to one loyalty program. The UK is the third highest, and we have 77.2% of the population enrolled in one loyalty program. But beating us and right at the top of the charts are the Scandinavians. Norway is top of the tree with 86% of population enrolled in at least one. Sweden 83%, and then it went UK, Ireland, then Denmark. So definitely an interest in loyalty in our areas. So I want to talk after kind of, well, why should I have a loyalty program? Why have all of these people enrolled in it? I think there's two main reasons. If you're in a competitive environment, it can be that edge. It can make you stand out against your competition. But for me, the absolute key reason why would you have a loyalty program? It's for the data that you can gather about your members, your customers, and then how you can then effectively use that for retention, all the things Martin said, to increase spend, etc. And one thing I did mean to address, and I didn't, probably should have said this at the start, why would Arsenal have a loyalty program? Well, we have a membership program, we have season ticket holders, we have membership program where people can pay an annual fee. And for that, you get, as I said, certain features and benefits, one of which is to have access to match day tickets. But why would we bother to do a points-based rewards program as well? Well, it's for retention purposes, effectively, because we see high levels for the annual membership program of people who are leaving. They haven't been able to get tickets for whatever reason, but with the rewards program, we give them, they can earn points for doing other activities as well. The moment somebody redeems for a reward, so we will have merchandise, we might have, you can redeem points to enter competitions, to win things, then people start becoming interested. And you could say, you know, so we're a relatively low transaction model, business model, but what we've seen since we've introduced the rewards program is a huge increase in everyday logins into the website, because people want to go and do the polls, predictors, games, etc., and then they want to spend their points. So we're seeing a much bigger percentage growing year on year of members who are logging in, and not just around match day, which is fantastic. So that was what I just wanted to talk about initially, why have a loyalty program and how do we kind of structure them. Then very briefly wanted to talk in my view on what you need in a loyalty program. So for me, it needs to be first and foremost easy to understand. And I think that's why a lot of people do get on board with the points-based programs, because they are quite straightforward. It's like money, you can kind of understand how that works. The downside to a points-based program, of course, is you have to be the type of person that is a little bit transaction in your head, the type of person that wants to understand how many points they've got. Benefit with that, though, is the moment somebody does start tracking their points, they're engaged. So that's great. Program needs to be rewarding. You need to have some rewards in your program that the member or the customer can achieve quite quickly. So not too much friction in getting to that first point, where you can actually redeem, get something if it's points based, or just earn something and get the email that tells you you've got a discount, or you've been entered into a competition, or you can enter a competition as a result of having done certain actions. So make it rewarding and make those rewards, those early rewards, quick and easy to get. But those rewards have got to be relevant to your brand. And actually, I'm using 3 R's here of loyalty. And I need to give credit to Alan Lias from Virgin Atlantic, who's always kind of driven this mantra into me. So they need to be rewarding. They've got to be relevant. It needs to be relevant to your product and relevant to your customer base. But third are recognition. You need to recognize different levels of engagement and transactions within your program. And that can be overt through tiering, where somebody progresses through tiers, or it can be something that's happening behind the scenes, where actually you're using that data in your marketing communications more effectively to show that you recognize them. And of course, in hotel programs, etc., it's recognizing, acknowledging that person by name, and the people at the let's say that the sticky end, those that are actually engaging with the customer face to face, that they have information and can recognize that that customer is a member of the loyalty program and the level of engagement they have with you. So I'm kind of checking on time here. I think I've been talking for 10 minutes already, so I'm going to make sure I keep going. How am I doing, Ringmaster?
Fine, Karen. In fact, I misled you all. Actually, it's 10:30 we're going to, and we can stay even later than that. So you've got plenty of time. So.
Perfect. Okay, great. So the third thing I wanted to look at was kind of just the costs and the mechanics of a loyalty program. And again, this is the points-based versus, let's say, more emotional engagement-based. And this is where it can get a little bit complex. First thing to say, if you are choosing to have a points-based program, it's not always obvious, but as I said, points have a value. If you're collecting up a balance of points, you have the company has promised you that you will be able to go and spend them on something. And so you need to assign a value to that point, and you need to hold that as a liability on the balance sheet. With airline programs, it can obviously be a very significant amount. I remember when I was working at NatWest, we had our link with Air Miles there. It was something that has to be managed carefully and needs to be audited. And yeah, it can be the bigger the points balances, the more of a management issue it can be. So we get around that actually at Arsenal. We expire the points at the end of every year. So that's how you can manage that liability. If somebody hasn't used their points, they're not engaged, then make it very clear to that customer that they're going to lose them. And then that liability has gone as well. So that's sort of the points-based cost of a loyalty program. Obviously, your other cost around that is the reward and the management of the program. And so that's really your annual marketing budget. And it can be as big or as small as you want it to be. But the structure of your program underneath that, you can't be promising rewards, be they physical or be they something that comes from your own inventory, let's say a discount on your product, if it isn't something that can be supported by your marketing budget. So I think that the costs of running the program is the part of the loyalty program that needs quite a lot of thought and ongoing management to make sure that the rewards you're providing are providing value but are actually affordable as well. And I think this is what I wanted to talk a little bit about partners in a program. And I think, as I said, where you have a low volume of transactions, partnerships is a way that you can give another source of ways that somebody could earn points or value that comes into your own loyalty program. But again, that needs to be managed. So if you think of the large airline programs, travel programs, you'll see that most of them you can go and earn points in other ways with other organisations. But the other organisation is very keen to partner with you because you're giving the might of your brand, if you like, to that partner organisation. So you're driving business to that partner as well, because let's say on an everyday basis, let's say Virgin is linked up with Tesco, you can earn points with Tesco. Great, that's driving business Tesco's way. And that member can then transfer points into the airline program. But the converse side of it, if you you will also, for a great loyalty program, want to provide great rewards, and sometimes you need to do those with partners as well, and that is a cost to your business. So if I take it back to Virgin again, because it's a good example, you can redeem Virgin points with Virgin Wines. Well, we would have to pay Virgin Wines for the cost of that box of wine that they're providing, at a great negotiated rate, obviously, for the points that that member has earned. So the balance sheet for a loyalty program can be quite simple. It's just your marketing budget, or it can start to become more complex when you're working with partners where they are paying you for the fact that you've driven business to them, added points to it, but equally you have to pay them when somebody redeems a reward with a partner. It can make that program bigger, better, and more attractive, but I think you know, it's only for the big companies, let's say. So partnerships important. How we use partners at Arsenal, we have our sponsors, and so we look to be able to offer some benefits, let's say with Adidas, with Emirates, but we also work with third-party agencies to deliver some of those rewards. Wherever possible, we will offer rewards that relate to Arsenal Football Club. That's our own inventory, it keeps costs down. For example, arranging a competition where you get to go to Colney, the training ground, absolutely amazing, you know, almost impossible to get from any other way. It doesn't cost us hardly anything to deliver that, but it has huge value to the member. But only a few people can benefit from that. So we make sure that we've got a balance of rewards with our partners, and then we also have rewards from third-party agencies. For example, Surprise and Delight, we're giving X number of members Uber vouchers for £5, and we work with an agency to deliver that. So the structure of the program can be extremely simple. Just offer a discount, just offer an additional benefit. Let's say I'm thinking of some of the examples we had here. Ralph Lauren, you know, it could be an experience where you get to go to a fashion show, London Fashion Week, something like that. Not too much cost for yourself, or it can be far more complex where you're starting to employ partnerships within the program as well. So that's kind of an absolute scoot over the key elements of a loyalty program. I think future trends, I briefly touched on that, which is really the power of technology now is enabling loyalty to be rewarded on a much more individual basis based on the data that we hold. And I think if you think about a loyalty program that's perhaps a little bit, let's call it old-fashioned, I think you would think of the supermarket ones, and that's because it's all about transactions, very kind of financial based. When you start thinking about emotional loyalty, you start thinking about the brands that are using badges, gamification, not as in playing games, but gamifying the engagement that you've had with that brand, that unlocks something, maybe on a surprise and delight level, maybe on a very overt level. But with data, we can now start being a lot cleverer, I think, about that personalization, that recognizing the level of engagement somebody has with your business. Something that we'd just talked about briefly whilst we were at the start of the call and before people were joining, is also the importance of making sure that your loyalty program is embedded across the entire organization. I think about actually the people that do this best of all. I went to my Shell garage filled up the other night, and I think you can pretty much guarantee that every time you go into a garage petrol station, they ask you if you belong to the loyalty program. That's where it's truly embedded. Every time you have that customer contact, they do it. But a loyalty program will fail if you can't recognise customers at all points of any customer touch point. So embedding it is hugely important. Anyway, I feel I've whittled on for quite a long time there, and rather than talk more in detail about things, I think it'd be really great to have a look at what people see as a great loyalty program, but also to delve into areas that people would like to talk about.
Great, thank you very much, Karen. I've been monitoring the chat in terms of what people have put down. It did make me, a couple made me laugh. But, somebody put, Monique, you put Avios, terrible. And I link that to, I worked at Air Miles for a year or so back in the late 90s. And Karen's absolutely right. The liability for Air Miles was astonishing because they were unlimited. They were lifelong, and therefore it actually causes the British Airways balance sheet problems because there were so many. So I just wonder whether Avios was a way of trying to change from Air Miles to get rid of the liability, which it turns out it might have been. So
Yes.
it's deliberately terrible.
Yeah, I think it's more about they entice you in to say there's going to be loads of benefits, and then when you actually try and redeem anything, it is absolutely impossible. So it's got me moving away from the British Airways Avios card to a different one, because it's just, yeah, it's more the it's that balance between getting it right for the business versus for the consumer, because the consumer is going to think at the end of the day, well, if I'm paying something, I should get something for it. So I just think it's terrible. I was a fan earlier on, and no longer now after about 3 years, where I've not been able to redeem anything. I've got like hundreds of thousands of points sitting there, sitting there.
I think you're right. You make a very important point, which is this balance between what's good for the business, what's good for the customer. And too many loyalty programs are, we can provide all these free benefits. Yeah, but nobody values them. They don't cost us anything to provide. Yeah, but nobody values them. So what's the point? Or make it difficult for people to redeem. People see through it pretty quickly, I think. We've also got, so Avios terrible. I'll leave it to your vivid imagination of who put Jack Daniels. At top left of your screen, ladies and gentlemen, is the Jack Daniels fan. Well, so Costa. Boots crops up a few times, and probably the most generous. I think they've rode back recently, probably the most generous in terms of reward points levels.
Yeah, I think with the Boots one, it's extremely simple and clear what you're earning. Interestingly, did some work on health and beauty provider, won't say which, and again, it's all about the data. Very, very interesting. Those who were driven by points tended to be those who were purchasing the higher end products, which is whereas those that were after the discounted price was were less engaged in the loyalty program. So again, you need to look at your products and work out who's buying what, will they be interested in loyalty or not, and then shape what your rewards or loyalty program is around that buying behavior as well. It's all about the data.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm actually, if you look at this, I'm actually wearing 3,000 quid's worth of Boots gear. Glasses, Bluetooth hearing aids, so I can hear you because I'm ancient. But I get Boots points on those. Yeah, fantastic. But the service was terrific. You can't just buy with points. The service has to be terrific, and it was. But yeah, to understanding those dynamics, I think is extremely important. We've got some others. I've got Naked Wines. I might talk about that later. Dave's got Green Shield stamps.
Wow.
I think for those of you who still remember the Green Shield stamps, I remember we'd go out of our way to find a petrol station where we could get the stamps. I know there was no competition for them at the time, but we got some of those scales where you put the weights on one side. And yeah, we convinced, oh, come on, Mum, Dad, go to the nearest garage. We want to get those Green Shield stamps, and I'll never forget that one. I know it was one of
the original loyalty program.
Yeah.
And by the way, there's you know, you will have a hardcore. There's about 5% of air miles collectors actually said they would risk running out of petrol to find a garage that gave away air miles. So there are some extremes there. Tesco come up quite a bit as well. The original, we're interested in the basket data, and that enabled them to steal a march on Sainsbury's for nearly 2 decades.
And interesting as well with Tesco, they were one of the first supermarkets to go for the new, I'll call it paid loyalty, where if with Club Card Plus, where if you were paying for that, it's effectively a membership scheme. You were getting discounts on groceries, and then you're also getting additional features and benefits, you know, through the mobile phone networks, etc. So sort of, yeah, they're building on it and becomes this merged membership and loyalty program.
I think it's interesting as well, that one where the whole piece that you said, Karen, around making sure it becomes integrated into everything. They've taken it on a step further recently, where you'll see even on the shelves there's reference to this product is this price, but with a club card it's this. And now all the other supermarkets have followed suit, and you'll see that, you know, Sainsbury's are now pushing Nectar card even harder to say you can buy this product at this price. So they're really almost forcing it to a degree whereby if you haven't got one, you have to accept that you're going to buy a product for a more expensive price, and then you go to the checkout and now it's reinforced again there, whereas in the past it used to just be taken that if you remember to use it and scan it, great, but now it actually asks you. So it's all about, like you say, integrating it, building it into every single touch point throughout the journey.
Yeah, it's interesting. Louise, you had a view on this in terms of supermarkets.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a personal view, but I just feel that it's a really poor, when you're meant to sort of be treating all customers fairly, it's a really visible sort of way of sort of segregating, and I think it's quite confusing, and I don't think you'd be able to do that in a lot of other industries where you're, you know, giving that sort of tiered offering. And I've been in so many supermarkets where you've got older people that are really confused at the checkout over the pricing and things. So yeah, I don't like that.
But there's also, so at the moment, I believe, well, I think it, I'll use the word allegedly so that I don't get sued. I think Tesco are being investigated by trading standards about whether the pricing is really actually fair. In other words, they're inflating the price of a product, which we all know they've done for years. But it's so visible, it's so hard hitting, and it's interesting. I was thinking years ago we launched a long time ago. We launched a thing called Privilege Club for Thomas Cook customers, so the very best customers. 7% who spent 40% of all of our sales. And some of the shop managers said, "Oh, well, we have sort of separate desks for Privilege Club customers." I said, "Well, we could, but by definition, that means we've got a riff-raff over here desk as well." And they laughed, and I said, "Well, absolutely, loyalty can be actually discreet in areas. That's one of the strengths of programs." And I think
sorry, Martin.
No, Mark.
Oh, you prompted me to think that, you know, that the thing with loyalty is it sounds so great, but it's got to be authentic, hasn't it? Otherwise, it then naturally undoes itself, because I had an experience recently as part of Sky VIP rewards, which again, they've tried to make more of it. So it's not just something that you interact with through an app, but you're sent lots of engagement, comms with rewards associated with it. But most recently I tried to transact with them to say, look, you know, I'm a platinum customer, so therefore I expect my broadband to be at this level, and it was more expensive than a new business customer. And that was just the structure of their business, which is they've got to compete to bring new business in, and existing customers can't necessarily take advantage of those same offers, even though you may be at the very top of the tier in terms of their reward program. And that's quite an interesting one, isn't it? Because then it just leaves a bitter taste in the customer's mouth that this is, you know, it's all words and not necessarily backed up.
I did think that Sky did quite well when they launched the programs quite a few years ago now, where they recognised how long you'd been a customer for when they launched the program, so that those who had been customers for longer, continuous customers, were put in a higher entry level than others. I know some people, I can't remember who, about a sense that maybe it should all be equitable. I think if you are calling something a loyalty program, then for me, loyalty is the length of time as well that you've been with something, with a brand. So yeah, I thought Sky were great, and we were talking about American Express. Member since date is a really important thing to American Express, and they recognise that. Very simple, but very important.
Same with the AA actually. So the road business, you'll know that, Nikki.
Tenure-based loyalty,
yeah, unbroken membership.
Yeah, you get a few people that I've been a member for 70 years since I started driving, in God knows when, and you get some really long-term people, and it's nice. They usually do get recognised. I think Sky were one of the first ones to actually do a fully tenure-based loyalty program in terms of their structuring, and I think it was really interesting at the time. Although I do gather they've had some issues with, obviously, the issue with that is that then you just get exponentially more and more people at the top, and then sort of how do you then break out what you do for the top people if suddenly you've got a larger proportion of your customer base. I'm not sure if they sort of future-proofed some of the structure of it, but it certainly was a really interesting one on that front. And when I was working for a sports streaming service a little while ago, and we were also looking at, the issue was kind of retention, because think about sport, kind of seasonal, so a bit of a retention issue at the end of the season. So for our model, trying to reduce churn and having that kind of length of tenure was a really interesting one to be looking at.
I think you make an interesting point there that in terms of future proofing, I mean, Karen, we talked about that, about what can happen. A loyalty program can look great for a couple of years until you realize you've got a massive points liability, or you're committed to costs that you weren't anticipating.
Yeah.
And I always just say the best advice is make sure you've got a friend in the finance department, not the finance director, because they might not even be a proper accountant, but somebody in the middle who will go and say, by the way, have you thought about this? Because we're marketing folk, we're not financial folk in a sense. We're financially aware, but you need a financial specialist to say, this is the implication of what you're doing 2, 3, 4 years down the road, because that's what the board will ask when you want to do a program like that.
And I think I remember launching programs at different organizations. As we've said before, absolutely every department, every function in the business needs to be involved. So finance, crucial partner, obviously legal, the legalities of it. But then where you are delivering your product, everybody that is located there needs to understand the loyalty program as well. For example, for us, for Arsenal, we need to make sure that people who are selling programs even need to be aware of because people can earn points from purchasing a program. So just anywhere across your organization, I think we're launching, and then any changes or any ongoing maintenance of the program, make sure that everybody's aware of it at any point. And the best thing,
absolutely,
best thing to do is get all of your organisation to join your loyalty program, and then they can live it. They can experience what the customer's experiencing as well.
Perfect. Sally, you mentioned. Oh, sorry, go on.
When you're designing a point scheme, and I've done quite a few, particularly at Debenhams, and we're one of the founders of Nectar, it is to plan an exit strategy, because there always comes a point where the board says, I don't want to give 1% of sales away to this group of people, stop it. And getting out of a loyalty scheme is incredibly difficult. When do you end it? How long do those points have? How do you deal with the customer complaints that come in? And it's always been a really traumatic part of running a scheme. But I also just wanted to touch on what Dave said about Green Shield stamps. And it reminded me, what Green Shield stamps had going for it was a sense of interactivity, which you don't necessarily get with modern point scheme, because you just collect them. And I collect points at companies that I don't know I'm collecting points at. I had an email from Expedia to say I have 1,000 points that are about to expire. I didn't realise I had 1,000 Expedia points, and I haven't booked anything with them in about 7 years. But Green Shield stamps had that whole Panini sticker appeal of sticking them in there. And there are companies that do that really well, like Shein and Temu. Some of these sort of very low value Chinese companies, they have apps that say log in today. Every day you log into the app, you get 5p or 6p or even a penny added to your points value, which is so addictive. You know, going back to Karen's point of gamification, and I think interactivity is probably missing. If your point scheme is too passive, it's not doing anything.
One thing that we've been doing, so we've got the points-based program, but then we also award badges for attending games and for certain other activities. And we use those badges to offer, I don't know if anybody, but when we did a something with Amazon where it was a documentary, which was great about Arsenal, but we premiered it the day before it was going out on Amazon. We premiered it at Islington Cinema, and we invited 1,000 members who had earned this badge. It was kind of exclusively to them, so there was no points involved in that, but it was just engagement based. But quite a clear way for them to understand why they had been given access to this reward. So it's kind of the modern Green Shield stamps bit. They were kind of seeing the how they were collecting these digital badges, and then the reward that they got from that. So I do think interactivity is really helpful, really useful, and that's definitely an area that I'm looking at the moment, looking at these different programs like Strava to understand how they're using it. Even the park run, there's a kind of an app associated with that where you can do kind of competitions, not to win prizes, just purely for the satisfaction of doing it.
Yeah.
I'd love to get your thoughts on business casing that, because this is the one thing that I've always kind of come across is, and to the point around future proofing and exit strategies, is giving away points for stuff that doesn't earn you any money, and trying to model out how that, like, there are lots of companies that do it, and I think probably some are a bit more robust than others underneath in terms of how they've actually worked out what the value is of that interaction. And I think in the loyalty industry, we tend to kind of talk about loving these brands that reward for interaction. But I mean, I'd love to know underneath some of the financial modeling around how they actually fund points for just like switching on the app. I mean, there must be some logic behind it, but I've always found it quite a complex one. I think, we have discussions, and I've in lots of different businesses that I've worked in on loyalty, is things like, let's reward for engagement. I'm like, okay, great, but like what does the engagement put on the P&L? Because if it doesn't put anything on, we can't really be affording at scale to be giving away points that have a value, or benefits and things like that.
Yeah, I think that's where the badges is calling it badges, but but that's
the sort of non-financial.
Yes, yeah, I think that's the way you can, without having to put a financial value on it, you can still track somebody's behavior and then reward them, but without having that that financial liability on it. I mean, one thing that I think is important to work out early on is what is the value of having a customer record and being able to interact, compared to once you've got that email address, and it's all about lifetime value, isn't it? But once you can put that value on it, then when you can start seeing, if I'm getting more interaction, more engagement, more visits, more logins, how does that compare to the person that isn't as engaged? And then you can start sort of doing some financial value to it. It's obviously it's not hugely robust, but at least you can compare. Let's put it that way. You could do a comparison.
It's very interesting to look at. I think it's a engagement crept into the marketing sort of lexicon about 15 years ago, And I used to do an impression. So what do you mean by customer engagement? People say, well, you know, that customers are sort of, you know, more engaged. Yeah, and what do you mean by that? Well, so in the end, if they don't buy something, donate something, or recommend something, the engagement is largely worthless. So I think it's actually looking at, does the level of engagement result in increased sales, increased donations, or increased advocacy? And that you can only do over time, with some hypothesis, I guess.
And do people game it just to, you know, engage repeatedly, just to, you know, I think it's very easy for that to happen in certain industries, certain markets as well. So you've got to kind of, you know, protect against that.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I think you can allow for, as long as it's like anything, as Craig said, you've planned your exit strategy, as long as you've anticipated there will be some gamers in the program and you've managed to do everything you can to restrict that. I don't think you can ever eliminate it, but yeah, to make sure that you're building against that as well.
Yeah. Sally, I'm interested by, you mentioned that you thought Vitality was an interesting program, and that sort of taps into the sort of a sort of health and well-being sort of zeitgeist, isn't it?
So I think they do it quite well. I will say their app is total crap. So it does kind of give them credit on one part, but not on another. Their tech isn't great. But yeah, certainly from that angle of linking it to the product offering, you know, their scheme makes complete sense. So the more active you are, the more rewards essentially you can unlock. And it's not things like, you know, you get a free health bar or, you know, something like that. It is actually things that you'd think, well, you know, that's quite good. So cinema tickets, for example, where you can, you know, go and watch a film for free. There are kind of health linked rewards. So like spa breaks, I think they've linked up with Champneys as a partner, which is nice. And, you know, free coffee, which again, you know, isn't necessarily healthy, but most people like it. So yeah, I think with regards to that, the way that they've structured their scheme and the rewards included certainly makes sense and are quite easy to redeem as long as you're being active, which ultimately, you know, as a life insurance provider, that suits them because that you're reducing their risk levels.
Absolutely. I think you're interesting by also to Karen's point earlier about it needs to go right the way across the organisation. I'm guessing that in Vitality, the app development team sit in a different silo to the people actually running the program.
Potentially. I think, given that I've had a recent interaction with them, I think they're not in the best position, is my take on it. You know, I think they've had a real raft of complaints. And they've had to draft people across different teams to come in and kind of troubleshoot their complaints volumes to try to get them under control. So yeah, I wouldn't say they're necessarily in the best position. But, you know, I think with regards to the scheme that they've got on offer, it does work and it does feel like it gives you that added value.
Yeah. And it does tap into an emotional aspect about who you are as a person. I want to be healthy and well-being, and I want to sort of I want to have vitality.
Yeah, so. Absolutely. And it certainly makes you keep an eye on your steps.
I actually think it absolutely ticks the box in terms of it's relevant.
Yes.
So, you know, a program relevant, good rewards and recognition, absolutely, you know, ticking the boxes there. Just a shame the way they're delivering it then on the app.
Tad.
So what I was going to say, so one of the points that come up at the beginning is how you can reward low frequency or those customers where there's low touch points. And so back in the 90s, when I was working for Homebase, Sainsbury's Homebase and Spend and Save, we had the same kind of issue. So the reward structure sort of rewarded the high spenders, but it didn't engage the people that were below 100 quid, if you like. So we ended up redesigning the program so that we would bring in an early touch point, you know, a lower threshold, and that started to kind of activate them. But there was a few brands here. So Monique, you were talking about sort of low frequency purchases. Rachel as well. If you've got any a steer for those guys, Karen?
Yeah, so for me, it's two things. I think number one is to make sure that the customer feels rewarded early on. So to set that initial reward very, very low, artificially low, it could be, because then they will be minded to come back. They've had a positive experience from it. And then I think the other thing is to encourage. It doesn't necessarily have to. You are obviously want to encourage more frequency of purchases, but if somebody's only traveling twice a year or whatever, they're not going to travel more. So it's to identify those customers where you think you can increase frequency or spend, and then tap into some form of bringing them to your site more frequently because you have the data there. It may not necessarily to be for a purchase, but just to try and bring them there. So that's where you would be doing, let's say competitions, some form of rewards. Might be something you could work with a third party agency there. I wouldn't sort of recommend setting up partnerships immediately there, but so that you can do something for a small, discrete, identified group of customers that you think are the most likely, the lookalikes that you want to shift over from the train or wherever, that have travelled with you, a couple of times, just increasing that frequency, but being very careful with your marketing budget or your awards budget, and focusing on those ones. Bring them in, try and increase their frequency and then their spend, and then I think programs can build from there.
But having that deep understanding of customers at the beginning is the crucial part.
Absolutely.
Of this, right? Because then you can start to define your customer strategies by segment. What objectives are you trying to achieve?
Yeah, so the onboarding process is really key with the loyalty program, or even just signing up without making it onerous and getting too much information. I think people now don't want to give very much, but just the simplest: understand their age group, have their email address, and start building from there.
Don't ask for everything at once.
Just on some of that you were saying, I think the challenge we've had around trying to get loyalty agreed is it's almost, we have a large proportion of customers who only travel with us very infrequently, but equally there are people who just travel with us again and again, and the challenge has always been, well, how do you know that loyalty is going to bring that incremental benefit? And in the end, all you're getting is you're just giving it to the people that are going to do it automatically anyway. And that is another challenge, which comes back to, I think someone was saying, when you come to sort of financially trying to show the viability of a program, that's been a big sticking point, where I've sat in board meetings where we've agreed it, and then you've put up something to say, well, actually, if you're going to give customers a free journey to entice them to join the loyalty, actually you start off on a net loss, and then eventually, if only the people who are going to take it are those that were traveling anyway, you're not making any money, and it just falls flat on its face. So how is, in that instance, what's the options? How do you overcome that? Because it's quite a challenge for us, that is.
In my experience, it's been reporting back and proving that those who were offered whatever for part of the membership or loyalty program, how they compared to those that hadn't had it. And in my experience, there's increased sales and more frequency of sales to those who are participating in the loyalty program. I think that's we've got examples. Spend on retail. Our retail shop at Arsenal members, even though they have discounts, a sizable discount, it's still better for us to offer that discount to get them to be part of the loyalty program, because ultimately they spend more and they transact more frequently.
Does that provide you, Karen, with a sort of permanent control that you can compare against, or is it on an ad hoc basis you look at that?
No, we track it. Ongoing. We have our insights team. We're always testing and learning.
Yeah. One thing also, it just strikes me, Monique, is that all of us on this in this room this morning, all of us know that to attract a new customer for the first time, we will all make a loss on, because the amount we have to spend on advertising to get them means that we will make a loss. Virtually all those customers, no matter what they buy. And actually, one of the ways to look at loyalty programs actually attract new customers. People think they're about retaining existing customers. They actually attract new customers. And it's actually saying, well, we get a better response to ads that we run with the loyalty scheme. So actually, we spend less money on advertising. Oh, so it's looking at the sort of substitute and the opportunity cost of different activities. I think it's worth thinking. Anybody else got that sort of experience? Would you agree with me that you all lose money on the first customer the first time they buy from you?
You certainly
depends on
carving up a lot of the marketing budget towards them, right?
Yeah, I would say it's true, and I think at a points-based loyalty scheme in particular, the main benefit is the data. Once it's mature and you have the data, you have that channel to talk to your customers, but then the points just become a liability, mainly because it's very difficult to run a point scheme which is actually good from the customer's point of view. It's always been 0.5% or 1% back in points, which logically really doesn't move the needle. Whereas spending money on surprise and delight activity, taking a group of customers and giving them something quite good, or at least something unprompted. At Debenhams, we would choose customers who had spent £5,000 in a year and send them a £5 coffee voucher. And they would absolutely love it, because we didn't say, spend for every £5,000 you spend, we'll give you a 20p cup of coffee, which would have been absolutely insane. But they just go, free coffee, Debenhams are great. Obviously not great enough to stay in business, but that's a difference.
I think something that's important, just building on that, is if you do a surprise and delight reward, so not everybody is getting them, it's so important to make sure that you've broadcast the fact that you are offering those surprise and delight, so that it isn't kind of wasted just on those few. Obviously, it wouldn't be wasted on them, but that it's amplified, and everybody says, "Oh, actually, yeah, if I do this, I could have an opportunity of winning that or getting that reward."
Just Nikki, you mentioned in the schemes that you liked or that you valued, you mentioned Liberty's Beauty card. Would you like to tell us why you said that?
That wasn't me. I said Keels.
I think, sorry, the beauty.
Oh, sorry, it's Rachel. Sorry,
yes,
Rachel.
I said that one.
Yeah,
sorry, Rachel.
The Beauty Club is a paid membership. So basically you pay £20 each month, and then every quarter you get a box delivered to you in like the Liberty branded. It's really nice surprise and delight. But what it does is encourage you, because you've been putting that £20 into account, you're then loyal to Liberties to spend that money. So every 6 months you've got £120 to spend. So therefore you then might go into Liberties, or you might go online, and then they usually tend to do, because you're a member, additional products on top of that. So if you spend over £175, you then get another bag of goodies worth £300. So it suckers you in, and as a marketeer I'm always suckered in, and I know exactly what they're doing, but I still take part in it anyway, and that's how they get you. But it's also that it's encouraged the 3 R's, right? It's relevant to me because I've signed up to it. It's got that surprise and delight. I'm being rewarded for basically putting money into an account that I only can spend with Liberties.
Yeah, it's that they're very old-fashioned, but they seem to have made a resurgence. It's the structural subscription-based models. Naked Wines did a fantastic job. I used to use it as a case study when I was talking about it. It's structural, you pay £20 a month. It's emotional because they call you a wine angel. And it's rewarding because they show financial, because you seem to get money better than other people, pay prices better than other people. So it ticks all 3 boxes in a different sort of, three-cornered way. But I think, and Liberty, I mean, it's a very, very posh store. I worked on the loyalty program 15 years ago, and they said, "But Liberty has got a loyalty program." Yeah. I said, because it works. It generates That's exactly the sort of things you've talked about with the beauty club, except without a subscription. So posh brands can still do loyalty.
Yeah, Harrods has got a really comprehensive one, and a lot of the online, so places like Matches Fashion and Farfetch and stuff. It's big in luxury and multi-brand, less so in kind of singular brand.
Yeah.
And I think it's largely around that, you know, where customers have a choice of where they buy that same item. You know, I can buy the same item in Liberty's beauty department, or in Harrods, or in Harvey Nicks, or in Selfridges, or wherever, and therefore kind of what's the reason to buy it in one rather than the other. And usually that loyalty offering is a good way of kind of locking in that transaction.
Yeah, very simple. There was a
Can I
couple
ask
of others.
about operating model? Because
Sorry?
Can I ask Karen about operating model? Because, you know, so the benefit is obviously, you know, a massive data footprint. You start to collect more data about customers, but then there's a you know, a sort of a real kind of need to then put resource and reporting and analysis. It's a real overhead, right? And another investment that probably needs to be considered.
Yeah, I think in terms of setup of initial setup, you need to invest time, and the reporting is crucial. On it. The key thing I would say with any loyalty or membership program is regular communication to your customers as well. So building, we have and well, you did this at Virgin, but it's certainly huge benefit at Arsenal. We do a regular, you know, once a month newsletter out to, well, e-newsletter out to the members, and we just see such a response to that every time. We do other targeted communications through the month as well, but it's almost as though I think people are looking for it, they expect it, they want that regularity. And there was another brand I saw this week that had, it was Adidas, that was it, Addy Club. They are now calling it a monthly, it wasn't newsletter, but it was monthly something or other. I think people like a bit of reassurance. They like that understanding that they're going to get this. And actually, just saying there about Liberties, every 3 months you get your box. You like that kind of, so you can almost build expectation that I'm going to have these opportunities to do things. And I think that can sink in with the operating model underneath the reporting. So you're starting to get that regularity, that cadence within the organization of, okay, let's check this, let's look at this, see how it's doing. You know, month on month you can start doing comparisons, and then start building that evidence of what the loyalty program is doing, the benefit that it's providing, but equally what things do you need to be addressing and turning off in the loyalty program that they're just not working. So we have, as I've said, third-party rewards that we do. We very carefully monitor the take-up on those, and then we'll stop working with a certain type of brand, and we start to get a feel of the types of rewards that our specific base like, that appeal to them, and so then we can work on developing more of those and eliminating the ones that aren't attractive.
Can I just, there's a couple of points in there, and I'd just like to grab Louise. You've got to go in a moment, haven't you?
Yeah, sorry, I've got a 10:30. I just need to get some bits together for.
This is a bit of showing off between me and Louise, actually, because and it relates to two things. One is the importance of timing and getting contact at the right time, and the frequency of it, and also an infrequent purchase, and also this thing about, I think, Rachel, you mentioned it with Liberty. Nikki, you built on that point about, well, I've got to buy these beauty products. I can get them in 3 or 4 different places. Give me a reason why I should buy it from you. And sometimes it can be a very, very simple reason. So Vision Express, Louise, you were the new marketing manager. I was the account planner for Solution 2, and you gave us the challenge about retention, about getting people to buy. And what was the research we found? I think it was some retail managers who'd done their own research about when people consider the purchase.
Yeah, so I mean, essentially, we were running a program. We had been running a program where There was lots of reminders for the sort of recall program to get customers back in to have their eye test and take another purchase. And that whole program really had, when we started to delve into it, customers had become wise to the fact that there was 3 elements to that. And if they waited long enough, they would get the 15-20% discount as part of the 3rd reminder. So it was actually working in the wrong way. And then our MD at the time said, actually, let's turn off the whole program and let's see if the program's doing anything in terms of encouraging customers into store. And footfall completely crashed into all of the Vision Express branches. It was well over 60% footfall. So it was clear the program was working, but actually we were having this adverse effect in that it was waiting until the sort of the 3rd point. So Martin and I and the guys at Solution 2 used the data that we'd got to build a different program that was encouraging customers to come in at the beginning, at that first interaction. And yeah, it was really successful. And then we used something very similar, didn't we, when we went to when I moved on to the Derbyshire. So it is, I think, as you mentioned, Martin, and also Andy mentioned, it's all about understanding the data and not necessarily being sort of distracted by what the front line are potentially saying, because that's not always necessarily, they may think that's true, but it's not always necessarily the case.
I always remember there was a piece of research that said something like 20% of people, when the 24-month reminder went out, i.e. the 2-year cycle, 20% of people had already been somewhere else.
Yeah.
So we moved the reminder 3 months to 21 months after the last appointment. And I think the sales retention went up by about 16%.
Yeah. And there was also a real correlation between not necessarily where the customer lived, it was where they were working and where it was near to them. So again, we used the data to sort of unpick that, and we'd traditionally been sending them to stores that actually during the working week they wouldn't have gone there. It was closer to their home, but not necessarily what their spending pattern was reflecting.
What was convenient for them.
Yeah.
So it's that bit about. I mean, Karen's probably got the biggest challenge of us all to get people to switch to her product. I mean, I'm not going to become an Arsenal supporter because of a rewards program, membership program. But all of us, I think, with loyalty need to think about, okay, so what am I, it sounds like I'm teaching him all to suck eggs, but what are the competitors doing? What are they prepared to do to reward a customer? But equally, how are they communicating? What's the timing of what they're doing? And how can I intercept that so that I look like the best proposition at a time when it's convenient for the customer? So, it was fun, wasn't it?
It was fun. Yes. Some great days, great meetings and things. So I need to dial off, but I've just dropped into the chat for me, and it may be fairly sort of specific because I'm in the B2B space and it's ethical. So for me, it's really trying to understand what's an authentic offer for our customers and for us as a business that would be appealing. And it's not going to be necessarily, it's not going to be monetary, and it can't be necessarily
Well, good to see you.
And but yeah, okay, great to see you all, and brilliant chat. Speak to you soon.
Okay.
Cheers. Thanks, Louise.
Bye.
Yeah, I think to Louise's point then, although she's gone, but I think it's identifying the behaviours that you want your customers to be doing and then just building rewards that reward that behaviour. It's as simple as that, whether it's a monetary reward, it's a prize, it's points, it's quite simple. Do this, get that.
And just to add, is it enough to drive loyalty? A case study from 2002, about 15 years ago, when everyone was on pay-as-you-go phones, and you'd get your little scratch card, A, to top up your phone, but B, you'd then go online and put in this code and you could win a holiday, a car, or more likely 10 free text messages or 5 free minutes of calls. And the redemption was superb. I can't remember the figure, but everyone was doing it. But after 2 years, they sort of did some analysis on retention, and it was not driving retention. So they spoke to the customers, and the customers weren't. Their feedback was, "Of course, I'm going to do this. You give me something for free, but the pay-as-you-go card I'm going for is the one that's going to give me the most minutes and text messages. You know, it's not driving any loyalty." So I think you just got to be prepared. What you're offering is actually going to drive what you want customers to do.
Yeah. So in that, because you use that data and customer research back to you, understand is it driving the right behaviour? If it isn't, change that that reward or that element of the program.
Yeah.
Anybody else got any thoughts? One of the things, just to we've just got 2 or 3 minutes left. One of the things to think about with loyalty is it can sometimes be, I don't know, Karen, if you've found this, where sometimes it's intrinsic as part of the brand. In other words, they understand it, it's part of their DNA. In other areas, it's a case of, oh, we've got to come up with a loyalty program. And it's almost, the importance of, you can see it sometimes with companies doing it, like it's so incongruent, or it clashes with what their brand is actually all about.
Yeah, it's got to
and then
be
they wonder why it
authentic.
failed.
Yeah, it's got to be authentic, or it's do you know, this is just an anecdote, it's nothing to do with loyalty programs, but about authenticity. When I started at Arsenal, so hands up, I'm not the biggest football fan. I'm a loyalty fan. That's what I love. I find it fascinating of delving into all of the data and everything. And I was talking to, we have different supporter groups, and I was talking to a representative from our blind supporters group and visually impaired supporters group. And I was talking to him about his experience of using the app and the loyalty elements of it. And we were just chatting, and he said, "You're not a football. You said you're not an Arsenal supporter, are you, Karen?" And this was, and I said, "Actually, I'm not." And he said, "I can tell from your voice." And I mean, that's the most direct. But I think if and I had to just say to him, "Yeah, I'm not a football fan, but believe me, I'm absolutely doing the best I can through this program for a great customer experience. That's what I am about." So, but I just thought, goodness, if somebody can tell your authenticity through your voice there, because I guess he listens, he's very attuned to different words that you use. But I just think, taking that back to it's got to fit with what your brand is. It's got to be relevant to your brand. Because customers spot a fake a mile off.
Agree. I think football is a particular one, which is, I remember sitting behind 2 blokes at Stamford Bridge going, "Hey, Zola, he's a really good player, isn't he?" And I thought, oh dear, somebody's been brought on a corporate jolly. Yeah, you can tell it, particularly with football, but actually other things as well. If you go back to Alan Lyas, who, by the way, Karen's colleague Alan is a former colleague of mine. I can do an impression of him, but I won't now. You have to talk at 100 miles an hour. But reward, relevance, and recognition. Those are 3 things to think about. And what I also use is emotional bond, structural bond, and financial bond. Those are the bonds that an emotional bond is. It doesn't necessarily say it says something about me, but that is one of them. But the other one is understands me. So, the tone of voice that comes back is really, really important. And the only way you can do that is as you recommend, Karen, which is sitting down with your customers in small groups and listening to them, getting feedback from them, from different groups of people, and understanding what it means for them. We're at 10:30 now, so we can go on a little bit, but if has anybody got any sort of final thoughts? I'm just thinking, Martin, Lisa, Sussex Cricket Club, I'm sure you're thinking about what do we do about loyalty, and you'll probably go away and go, crikey, how do we deal with all that? And you've got some very specific challenges of, as you say, these different formats. And it just made me think about one of the things is in financial services, people will follow, favorite uncle or granddad who tells them about what you need to do with a pension. I'm thinking about Sussex. You know, younger audience, they want to see the 100, bish, bash, bosh. And the older supporter sitting there at in the Hove ground is thinking, how very, very modern. It's not cricket. So you've got these sort of two extremes. But actually, do the older members see that new format as getting young people involved in cricket?
Depends on the older member that you're talking to. Because some of them like it for the re-engagement and the introducing our sport to the new fan. But the opposing view is it's not a direct correlation of the traditional sport. So we're not potentially attracting the right kind of people to our game. But it's everyone's opinion, so it's fine. I think the interesting thing for us really is the loyalty isn't necessarily our problem, or retention, or the engagement and stuff, because obviously we're a sport, we're delivering a sport, so they're engaged just because we're playing cricket. For us, it's growth, where we're struggling to attract new. How do we get new or more people in? And that I think is probably our current and one of our biggest challenges. Is how do we talk, how do we get the 1 or 2 visits a year people more engaged to stay, to become a member? That's what we're...
And so, Karen, you've done a lot of that at Arsenal, I would imagine.
Yeah, I was actually thinking the more the thing that immediately sprung to mind was a very simple thing we did at Virgin Atlantic, which was to show people what they were missing out on if they didn't join in the membership program. And so that's just my immediately thought on that is, if you at Sussex, if you join the membership program, what do you get that you wouldn't get if you weren't a member? And it might be early access to something, or that. So just to encourage, and it also then gives you the ability to start communicating with them more frequently, with some relevant communications. You can still have their email address and they're not a member, but it's not really relevant then. But you've got certain other sticky things that you can send those communications about, or encourage them. I don't know if you have an app, if you encourage downloads of that, then you can start incorporating much more relevant and targeted messaging to them, which over time I think would evidence that you were getting more attendances.
Yeah, maybe somebody mentioned earlier, just I know this is detailed, but about you mentioned at Arsenal about training ground access.
Yeah, so that.
And if I turned up for a match at Hove, and I could get there an hour early and see your fast bowlers limbering up in the nets, and finding out how fast 85, 90 miles an hour does look close up, I really want to do that, and I want to bring my kids to see that, and I want to bring my friends to do that.
Yeah, so that's one of the things that we've been kicking around about doing, like members' days, and making it very specific to our member base only, and allowing them to come in for like the pre-season training when every player comes back and they get put through their paces and all the rest of it. They're just getting them off the ground and doing them. Wanting to and doing it are two different things. We've spent a lot of time on our data because our data hasn't been brilliant, and we also have the challenge with cricket with a large proportion of our members who refuse to go online, and they don't want to come on the digital journey with us, and they don't want to do all of that. So we're still working through that. COVID helped because they had to. So that we managed to convert a large proportion through COVID. Now we just need that last few. And how do you get them, and how do you keep talking to them and making them feel relevant when they don't want to be digital? So we've got to balance all of that up as well. But yeah, we've got some ideas. We're brewing some stuff.
That's sounding a little bit like it's not so much getting those people to come more frequently, it's getting new people who perhaps are younger and more open to digital interactions to come along. I actually heard a stat the other week that by the age of 14, children have decided which clubs they're supporting. This is more in the football. So I think you're doing something that is very much aimed at a younger audience as well, and therefore their parents can be a way in.
Yeah, we I think the difference in a nice way from football to, well, men's football definitely, is the accessibility of cricket. So you can go to the Oval, you come to Hove, you can go to Southampton or Kent within an hour and a half of each other, and the ticketing is reasonably similar. So it's not, and we never really play on the same evenings. But yeah, the loyalty side for us, like Lisa said, we don't have that issue, but it's also driving the T20 guys or visitors that come twice a year to then try and convert them to our lower membership, which is considerable jump, and then to your full memberships, which doesn't get you into the T20 that they'd like. So there's the way that we are trying to grow it is just a different way. And yeah, like you said, there's plans. An app is something that we aspire to get to, financial constraints, but that would allow us to start implementing the loyalty and driving the digital side. But yeah, the memberships for like an under 14 is like £7. So and you get that for a full year. It's not difficult, but you need the adult or the grandparent to buy their membership as well to make it worthwhile. But yeah, there's lots of ideas. We're trying to work with our Qs on our data, which we're just starting on, which is great, which is the first part of understanding what we can do and where we can go with it.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank
Ladies
you,
and gentlemen. We seem to have got to 10:30, so and a bit past it, so I'll hand back to Craig.
Brilliant. Thanks everyone for coming. Sorry, we've lost a few people before I can thank them again, but I will get a note out. I hope everyone found it a really useful session. I certainly did. It's just, these sessions are always just so good to hear views from different industries, and people are always so much more willing to talk and be open if it's not 7 financial services people sitting together or 7 retailers where nobody wants to give anything away. So I always learn stuff. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you all got your breakfast boxes as well, by the way, and your mugs. If you didn't, let me know. I'll send you another one. But thank you very much, and we'll see you next time. I'll get notes out when the next session is on.
Karen, thank you. Really, really good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you guys
so much.
Bye bye.
Cheers, Martin.
Bye.